Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here with an update on R. Kelly's Chicago federal case. There was a status hearing that took place this morning, and it looks like the shenanigans are continuing to try and silence this man. Throughout the trial, I guess he was trying to speak on his behalf, but they claimed that they couldn't hear him. And then it was later revealed that the reason they couldn't hear him is because his audio was muted and they were unable to figure out how to unmute him. So to me, in that case, if the defendant had something to say and he wanted to be a part of the status hearing, then they should have stopped the hearing until they were able to unmute the audio to give him an opportunity to voice his concerns. And you guys know that Steve Greenberg has been on Twitter claiming that him and Mike Leonard are still the attorneys for Mr. Kelly on his Chicago case. And so, of course, they were there speaking on his behalf at this hearing. So we don't know if he was saying, no, I don't want them on my case, you know, they're fired or whatever. And so we really have got to stay vigilant and, you know, continue to report on this case. And I know I have been missing in action for some time, but it was just so much negativity, you know, going around after the New York verdict and just so much misinformation out there. I just said, you know what, let me stand down and just wait for all of this to settle before I can give my views and opinions on what's going on. And then I remembered that this hearing, you know, was coming up. And so I began to, you know, research to find out what went on. And so Jason Mesner with the Chicago Tribune, you know, he covers everything R. Kelly in Chicago. And so here is his recap of what took place in that hearing today. He says, you know, he confirmed, which happens common, you know, people were putting out that, you know, Mr. Kelly was on suicide watch, like that was a big deal after the verdict. So it is customary after someone, you know, who's facing a significant amount of time in prison is found guilty for them to put them on that type of watch. And so Greenberg stated in the first court hearing that the U.S. Bureau of Prisons placed the singer on a watch for some time, but that has been lifted. Not sure why he needed to bring that up during the hearing. He is forever showcasing. And then Greenberg also said that Kelly has told him he's in the process of revamping his legal team in the New York case, which underwent a dramatic shakeup in the weeks leading up to the trial, but that Greenberg and Leonard believed that they will stay on as lead counsel in Kelly's Chicago cases. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about in a future video is how Greenberg has just been all over Twitter, just acting the fool, you know, dogging out the attorneys that handled the case, continuing to dog out Nicole, just all over the place. And for that reason alone, Mr. Kelly needs to let Greenberg and Leonard go. He probably needs to let everybody go and just start afresh if he is able to do that. And several attorneys have spoken out since the guilty verdict, basically saying how he was railroaded and how, you know, the government used underhanded tricks. And I would think that they would want to step forward and, you know, somebody would want to step up and say, let's help this man, because I really don't think there would be a lot of pushback, except, you know, especially for attorneys taking on his case. I mean, they're out there trying to make a name for themselves, and what better way to jump on this wave, because we know that, you know, there's more coming down the line for more industry people. So why not make a name for yourself by, jumping in on this case and making a difference for this person? And so Greenberg went on to say, I think he's talking about bringing in new lawyers in New York. And so Lineweber set an August 1st, 2022 trial date for Kelly and his two co-defendants, Darryl McDavid and Milton Brown. And you guys know, I don't know if he's gotten better yet, but that Milton Brown, who goes by the name June, he was really ill over the past year. And so hopefully he has gotten better, but I don't know how this is going to pan out for him if he is still suffering from whatever illness that was. And so the trial is going to take place at the Durkin U.S. Courthouse and is expected to last 3 or 4 weeks. And then Messner talks about how Kelly was on the conference call. It says that he participated in the conference by video from the federal jail in Brooklyn, but did not speak during the hearing because no one could figure out how to unmute him. So we don't know, like I said in the beginning, we don't know what he had to say, what he wanted to contribute. If he wanted to say, no, I want Greenberg off this case and he doesn't speak for me. Because once again, Greenberg doesn't talk about the fact that he sat down and talked with him, that he's been to Brooklyn to visit him, to see what he wants. So he's just there performing because he is still the attorney of record. And so they go on to talk about, how the jury found him guilty of 12 individual illegal acts, including sex with multiple girls, as well as a 1994 scheme to bribe an Illinois public aid official to get a phony ID for Aaliyah. He faces anywhere from 10 years to life in prison when he's sentenced on May 4th, 2022, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn. Kelly's attorneys have said it makes little sense to rush to trial in Chicago without knowing what Kelly's sentence will be in New York. In the Chicago federal case, if the Chicago federal case does go to trial, it will likely focus on graphic videotapes Kelly allegedly made depicting him having sex with at least 3 people when they were minors, court records show. The 13-count indictment filed in July 2019 alleges that Kelly, both on his own and through associates, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, gifts, and legal settlements to try to buy up copies of the tapes before they could get in the hands of investigators. One of those tapes, which allegedly shows Kelly with Rishana Landfair, was at the center of charges against him 2 decades ago, but she at the time refused to testify, leading to a stunning acquittal by a Cook County jury in 2008. And they seem to want to continue with that narrative where we already know that she did not refuse to testify, but the prosecution chose not to call her because they thought they would have had a better chance of conviction without her testifying. But the media continues to push this narrative that she refused to testify. And so it goes on to say that she's identified as minor 1 in the new indictment and is allegedly cooperating with federal investigators and is expected to be one of the key witnesses against him should that case go to trial. She also is the alleged victim in one of the 4 pending abuse indictments filed against Kelly in Cook County in February 2019. And so I think this is really interesting that, they say she's going to testify and she's going to say that it was her. But we know that Tasha K reported that she has been putting money on his books ever since he has been locked up. And so I'm not sure how that would play out. And then people were also speculating that the only reason she agreed to testify was because the feds were threatening to charge her father, with some type of crime because he continued to work for Kelly. They also claimed that there was these millions of dollars in payouts. But however, the family has filed bankruptcy multiple times. She has borrowed money or asked Kelly for money through the years, like to buy a new car, for $1,000 here, $1,500 there. So it doesn't sound to me like the family received $20 million. And so what's going to be interesting is that Rashana's father, we all know, passed away, I believe, back in August. And so with her father being deceased, what is the incentive now for her to continue to participate with the feds, unless they're also threatening to arrest her mother or charge her mother with something? But we do know that the feds are threatening her with something to force her to come in and testify. And then it goes on to say, according to the federal indictment, Kelly and his associates ran a year-long scheme to hide Rashana, including flying her parents out of the country to keep investigators from interviewing them, and later making payments to her and her family to induce them to lie about the abuse to a grand jury. The payments, gifts, and other benefits continued even well after his 2008 acquittal. According to the indictment, as recently as October 2015, he was still making monthly payments to her through his businesses, often using the word settlement in the transaction line, according to the indictment. The lead charge in the indictment, producing CP, carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison and a maximum of 20 years behind bars. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, because Greenberg said in an article that came out about a week ago that basically, if he stays on this case, he is going to be pushing for Mr. Kelly to plead guilty to the charges in both the federal indictment as well as the Cook County indictment, that he's going to try to get him to plea out before the sentencing in May of next year in the Brooklyn case, in hopes of getting a lesser sentence on all the charges combined. So it'll be interesting to see, one, if Greenberg stays on this case, and two, if he is able to convince Kelly to plead guilty for lesser charges in the federal Chicago case and the Cook County case. So guys, that's it for me. Go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.